Welcome to Acronym TV, coming to you this week from the Young Turks studio in Los Angeles. I'm pleased to welcome to the program Amber Lyon. Amber is a three-time winning Emmy Award-winning journalist, filmmaker, photographer, and explorer. She is the founder of the news site Reset.me, the web show and podcast Reset with Amber Lyon. Both the site and the show cover the potential for extreme therapies and alternative medicines to cure anything from depression to cancer. Amber, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Dennis.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you went from a three-time Emmy Award-winning journalist, coming up on CNN, covering Occupy, covering social justice issues, your book Peace, Love, and Pepper Spray, and now you're focusing your journalistic efforts on the healing power of psychedelic drugs.
Have we been misled about the medicinal properties of psychedelics, just like we were misled about medicinal marijuana? More than 40 years ago, governments worldwide made psychedelics illegal, calling them dangerous drugs. But the most dangerous drugs on Earth are alcohol and nicotine, and both are legal. The law is not based on science. For thousands of years, native cultures have used psychedelics not as drugs, but as medicines. And science is on their side. Numerous studies show that psychedelics are not neurotoxic. They're non-addictive, and they have the power to cure even the most stubborn cases of anxiety, depression, addiction, and post-traumatic stress disorder. When people with treatment-resistant PTSD were given the psychedelic MDMA combined with psychotherapy, 83% were cured. Compare that to just 25% with psychotherapy alone. With 22 veterans a day committing suicide in the U.S., it's vital this medicine is made available to the public. The caffeine in your coffee is more toxic on your body than psilocybin mushrooms. The science shows these non-addictive substances actually slow down activity in areas of the brain overactive in people with depression. In one study by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, 80% of subjects who were given psilocybin said the experience increased their sense of well-being and life satisfaction, and 30% called it the single most important experience of their lives.
So how do you go from a career made for a mainstream media to like a 21st century Timothy Leary?
Well, I've never, taken the traditional route in my journalism there, Dennis. I just realized time after time, I spent a decade on the streets covering some of the worst humanity has to offer, whether it be war, slavery, drug trafficking. And I realized after a certain amount of time that I was just covering the symptoms of the greater problem, which is our collective madness. And we really need healing on the individual level before anything's going to change when it comes to all the destruction we're seeing in this world. So I decided really, from now on for the rest of my career, I'm going to really attack the core, which is this collective insanity and collective need for healing, whether that be physical healing or healing when it comes to mental health disorders.
And how do you go about attacking that?
I'm working now to start a website, Reset.me, which really focuses on natural medicines and psychedelics. And we've been told psychedelics are drugs by our government. They've classified them in with heroin and methamphetamine. But the truth is that a lot of these psychedelic drugs are actually medicines in natural cultures. And they've been using them to purge trauma. And a lot of these natural cultures who use psychedelics don't know what anxiety and depression are. They don't have words for those because it doesn't exist in their culture, because they've been using these medicines for so long. And I really think it's one of the greatest human rights tragedies of this century that the general population does not have access to these life-saving medications. We have to start somewhere. And I think the best way to start is to start educating people, especially through these anecdotes, miraculous anecdotes of people who've been cured. And
you've had some positive personal experiences with the ayahuasca.
Very much so. Personally, I was facing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And as a journalist, I'd spent so many years on the streets covering prescription pain pill addictions to Xanax. And I knew when I started having symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that I did not want to reach for prescription medication, because I'd just seen the worst of the worst effects of these medicines. And so I knew there had to be another way. And I started researching these natural medicines, and that's when a friend of mine introduced me to ayahuasca. And I started reading the research, and I just had to clean my jaw up off the floor. It's like this medicine that's not being allowed to be administered here in the US has profound effects in not only curing post-traumatic stress disorder and addictions, mental health disorders, but also some studies have shown that ayahuasca over the long term increases your levels of serotonin, which is the chemical in your brain responsible for happiness.
Right.
So you're wondering why aren't these, being administered to the public? And when I went down to try the ayahuasca, I had such profound healing effects that I knew as a journalist I was going to do a 180 in my career and start focusing on these medicines.
So it's not to say that you're not interested in all these social justice campaigns or stories that you were covering before, but that this is a completely new focus for you? This
is a completely new focus, and an insight I've had on numerous occasions when I've been working with these healers and these medicines has been, Amber, you've got it all wrong. Like, you're spending all your time focusing on the symptoms of the insanity, which is all of the destruction, the wars, the fighting. You really need to get in and focus on healing at the individual level. Show people that they have the power. They don't need necessarily doctors in Western medicine, but that they have the power to heal themselves. And when people start healing at the individual level, collectively, we're going to see dramatic change in society.
All right, walk me through that, because I can see you have an energy about you that you feel healed, you feel positive, you seem happy. But how, if I become positive, I become happy, how is that going to stop, say, the military, U.S. foreign policy from wreaking havoc all over the world? How is that going to stop us from jailing so many people and profiting off the prison populations? How is that going to do anything but just make me happier, which is maybe the noblest goal of all? But seriously, as far as societal issues, how's this going to do it? Well,
a lot of the reason we're seeing so many problems is because people aren't happy. People are anxious, they're depressed, they feel powerless. And so that's if you look at right now, almost a quarter of women in their 40s and 50s are on some kind of antidepressant, which often just numbs them to what's happening in society. So if you can get those women off this medication, you can get them healed, they're going to be a lot more productive as citizens and making sure that all this destruction doesn't happen. Also, often a symptom of trauma, so many of us are carrying up bottled trauma, especially from our childhoods, that affects us the rest of our lives. And oftentimes people are carrying that trauma, and that's why they're performing poorly, they're harming others, because it's a way of their trauma acting out. And so if you heal that individual that is, say, killing people or harming the world, if they're able to heal themselves and purge that trauma, it'd be nearly impossible for them to continue on such a destructive path.
Yeah, I'm going to out myself. I've got some anger issues. I do.
You don't appear like it here, at least.
What? No, no.
I caught you at a good time.
You caught me at a good time. I mean, I wake up every day and I look at the news and I feel impotent. Right? I've been trying for 7, 8 years at creating new media. I left a comfortable job teaching to start doing this kind of advocacy journalism that we were talking about. And oftentimes you feel like it has no effect. People watch the videos, people understand, people shake their heads, they might click an online petition. But I'm getting excited about the possibility for doing some mushrooms to deal with my anger. So talk me through how that might work. Or
okay, well, I found psilocybin mushrooms. We've been highly misled about them. I grew up in the middle of the country, so I thought if you take a psilocybin mushroom, because I drank the DEA Kool-Aid, that you're going to go insane the rest of your life, jump off a balcony, think you can fly, and end up dying.
Right.
And unfortunately, we've been misled. The truth is that psilocybin is one of the most profound chemicals known to the human brain. Some studies out of the University of Southern Florida have actually proven that psilocybin may regenerate brain cells or lead to neurogenesis. So when you're taking them, you're actually regrowing brain cells. They also slow down activity in areas of the brain responsible for depression. And some people believe they can reroute your serotonergic system. So say you have PTSD or chronic trauma, it can actually fix that. Studies here at UCLA found that psilocybin reduces cancer or anxiety in terminal cancer patients. So it's this profound, profound substance. So something that I used it personally to help with my post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've talked to several scientists who believe this could be the case, but I literally believe it restructured my brain. Like, I can't get anxiety. I'll try, I'll watch some of these, end of the world documentaries and I'll just turn on the local news, and which often makes people anxious because they feel like it's out of their control, and I can't get it anymore. And that's why I feel like, psilocybin is a substance we need to start taking a look at again as turning it into a medicine.
So, but people primarily take this as a recreational drug, right? College kids go away for the weekend, they get a camper, they get some friends, they drop some shrooms.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people really enjoy the experience.
Right.
You kind of, it slows down activity in your brain, so you're not really hallucinating. You're actually seeing the world more as it is. But the problem is, if we were to see the world as it is, we would be vulnerable to not even leaving our houses because we'd be so amazed at the energy coming off the table and the bright, vivid colors. And so a lot of people enjoy taking psilocybin recreationally. That being said, I'm looking at it through the scope of history and these native cultures, especially in like Oaxaca, Mexico, the Mazatecs. They've been using psilocybin mushrooms as medicine for thousands of years.
Right.
I mean, I spoke with one healer there. I spent some time in Oaxaca, and I told her how they're illegal in the United States, and the government says they're addictive, which they're not. And she started laughing at me, you know,
right.
because they've been using them for so long as a medicine, and it's not a drug there.
Right. So why is it illegal here?
That's a really good question, and I think it all goes down to, it all boils down to money. It can't be patented, so it's going to be very difficult for the prescription drug industry to make money off of psilocybin mushrooms, as well as just the propaganda and fear that's been generated around psychedelics in general. I think now that we've realized we were misled about medicinal marijuana, I'm hoping the country can kind of open their ears up to psychedelics as well and think, well, maybe if we were misled about a substance that's as profound as marijuana, maybe we're also misled about psychedelics, which is the case.
I'm interested to shift the conversation a little bit to talk about your journey from CNN to where you are now. Right?
I'm completely independent now, which is the beauty of the internet.
Right.
So any journalist can start a website or a TV show and really have the power to get the message out without having these traditional dinosaur gatekeepers, which I think it would be really difficult to be doing the journalism I'm doing now on natural therapies and medicine in a mainstream outlet that's funded by prescription drug companies.
Right.
It would just be almost impossible.
Right.
So fortunately, I'm able to do what I need to do on my own.
One of the story that you did for CNN was the BP story, where you went down and you showed people how the dispersants were. That's literally submergent journalism.
Yeah, we were so upset because BP was just pumping all of these dispersants into the ocean, saying out of sight, out of mind, the oil's gone away. But really what the dispersants were doing was just breaking the oil down into little beads that were floating into the water column, which is the most important column of the ocean, the first 10 feet when it comes to biodiversity. And so we were able to go down and scuba dive underneath the water and say, hey, wait a minute, guys. There's still oil here, unfortunately, and it's killing all the bait fish and killing, you know, the lifeline of the ocean.
Right. So again, the little cynic creeps up in my head and says, that's going to happen again. Right? Yeah. They keep drilling oil. They haven't put any regulations on, and the healing power of psychedelics is going to help us with that. In what way?
Well, that's another thing I've kind of questioned myself. Like, am I on the right path? And I think that the destruction and devastation and craziness right now is so insane that it's really difficult to think you can make a difference at any point. But I do know when people have used these medicines, they've often felt more of a connection with nature. They felt more of a responsibility to perceive the world as one, to love their neighbors. I know this sounds so hippie, but it's true. And when you can heal,
change the world.
And exactly.
Right.
And you know, there are people, businessmen and bankers, who've gone down, and stockbrokers, very famous ones, who've gone down and tried these medicines, specifically ayahuasca, and completely done 180s in their career. And instead now they've changed to responsible investments or to opening their own retreat centers. So it's pretty profound the amount of change people receive when they do try these medicines. So my goal with all of my work journalistically from now on is to get out accurate information about these medicines and make sure that eventually we are able to enact policies that allow everyone on this planet to have access to them. Because once everyone on the planet is able to do mushrooms and other psychedelics, then we're going to see a really massive amount of collective change. It'd be very difficult to go work for BP knowing you're still polluting the ocean and stuff after you've had many of these experiences, because you're really put in touch with nature.
Okay, so let's talk about reset.me then. This is your new venture.